hi everyone. Welcome to this World's commentary. I'll be doing commentary on my match versus Chris Dyer in the finals of the top cut. This is DLR Max versus TTM, and with me are two very special guests. We have World's 2016 top 8 finisher Dave Hoyland. Hi Dave.
How's it going?
Yep, good. And his testing buddy Mark Mottram. Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
Yep. Okay, so for those who are not very familiar with the UK Netrunner scene, Dave and Mark are a dangerous duo, shall we say. Always bringing off-meta decks, specifically Siphon Anarch. They have been testing it a lot, especially in the lead up to Worlds, and they have been showing very strong performances with it. So before we get into the commentary, I'd like to have a bit of Siphon Anarch discussion. There are three main Siphon Anarch archetypes that we saw at Worlds. Keyhole Wizard, which Dave Hoyland brought himself and finished top 8 with. We have the West Coast Wizard, which uses Medium and Obelus for strong R&D digs. And we have the Max, which we'll see soon. So Dave, can you tell us how do you compare these decks? What do you think of them against each other?
So they're all very similar in their threat. So Siphon is a huge threat to corporations, obviously, but they all go about their kind of secondary game plans differently. So I think the Keyhole, so Eater Keyhole sort of Siphon deck, which I took, its B plan really is to use the threat of Siphon to make the Corp focus all its defenses on HQ, but that means it can't build a good scoring remote and protect R&D from Keyhole. So either they take the hit on R&D, or agendas build up in hand, and then you've got cards like Wanton Destruction, which really hurts them. So that's the strength, I guess, of most of them. DLR Max is a bit different in sense of if they're slow because they're defending against HQ, then you get to build your immensely powerful DLR board until the point where they can't trash anything, and actually they lose at that point. So they're on a clock with DLR Max as well. I've not played a huge amount of the West Coast Hate Bear deck, but I mean it's got the medium threat, so and it's still running Faust, so it can do those big R&D digs as well. So it's got a lot of threat, and it's also got the access threat on remote servers as well, which the Eater Keyhole decks struggle to threaten quite so well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I find with DLR Max, there's no R&D threat, almost none, and the remote threat is almost non-existent. Mark, I know you've been testing a lot of DLR Max and Siphon Wizard in the lead up to Worlds. Share with us your testing experiences.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, as you said, Siphon Anarch, something that Dave and I have been playing pretty much most of the competitive season. I think from the second half of regional season onwards for me, and I think Dave was playing it before that. I was playing Leela for a while, but then kind of switched on to this. Dave won two regionals. Definitely one of them was playing with Siphon Wiz, and obviously I top forward at Reading playing a very similar archetype in Null, and then we both played it at UK Nationals and obviously finished top 16. It's really strong in a yellow predominant meta. So you've got as Dave was saying, the Siphon threat to kind of keep them poor, and the ability to bounce back from tag punishment. And CTM, if you do get it in the right position, really does kind of struggle to any foothold in the game if you can keep on top of it in terms of tags and economy wise. And then you can obviously also keyhole it with people over defending HQ because they're worried about getting siphoned again. And obviously Wanton Destruction is a very powerful card against things like psychographics, Sweeps Week and Closed Accounts, which are the main hate cards against the deck. You've got DLR Max as well, which is, I think it's probably got a stronger matchup against the kind of Glacier archetypes because they're a little bit slower. They don't really able to keep on top of it, whereas with Siphon Wiz, I think that when Dave and I found in testing was probably the weaker matchup, and I actually found in World Swiss when I saw nothing but Glacier apart from for one round. From that, it's a much tougher matchup with things like Chrysium Grid and things like that, whereas with DLR max, as long as you can keep on top of it with the economy, you can eventually just put a time pressure on them where they're not really able to do anything. Whereas in Glacier against Siphon Wiz, if they shell up, then they're kind of able to ride out the storm and then eventually score out when you've run out of siphons.
Oh yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, that's one advantage of DLR Max. You have quite the late game inevitability that Siphon Wiz might not have. All right.
Yeah, I was surprised with the San Fran list, which I played at King of Servers, and the HP matchup for there is a lot more interesting. It's quite boring in terms of the way that you go about it, though, because there's an awful lot of ice destruction in the deck, so you kind of find yourself kind of running Bioroids and HQ and then clicking them and jacking out and then going again with the relevant piece of cutlery, and then they put more ice on there until eventually they either run out of ice or they manage to sneak out enough agendas. But the deck there is really nice, and like Dave said, it's got a lot of pressure on the remotes with Faust as well. However, the one thing that I found in testing is a little bit more vulnerable against kill decks, because you have like 1 or 2 turns where you kind of have to go tag me for the obelisk stuff to work, but you do have that kind of degree of vulnerability where you definitely need a Plascrete down or a knife had worse in hand, especially with cards like Boom and Scorched Earth.
Yeah, Boom is particularly tricky because once you siphon, you need to draw on the same turn. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that. All right, so let's get into the game. I'm on the bottom playing Max, and up there is Chris. Turn 1 is Hedge Fund into double ice on HQ, always a solid move.
So I think it's a very solid move against DLR Max because you don't have any R&D pressure. Against other Siphon decks, I think that can be exploited quite badly. So if this was against San Fran Wiz, then here they could easily, gamble, drop a medium, and punish that quite a lot. Same with Keyhole Wiz, you can punish it. Whereas DLR Max, it's basically, okay, I can't DDoS Siphon, so my game plan is set up.
Yeah, Wizards typically don't run that many DDoSes and are not that reliant on DDoS, or cannot find it early enough. So you're probably right about that. The standard HQ R&D opening is better against Wiz. So,
yes, I don't run any DDoS into Worlds, but people still played like I did, and that's because I have in previous builds or because they can't take the risk. So I think, now I've published the list, I would actually probably slot in some DDoS just for that threat. But yeah, Chris's opener here is pretty much solid against this deck, and he knows the deck very well. I would argue, Ben, probably better than you did. Probably sure. in the weeks coming up to Worlds.
Yeah.
So playing round in this, Alex White and I played against Chris kind of after the icebreaker with a very similar, if not identical, list to the one that you're playing here, Ben. And he is very good at kind of playing around it, and he was kind of testing different ways of beating it and scoring out and trying to get things from that. And like I said, the double ice on HQ play is pretty solid in here, and he's got his economy going, but he's aware that he needs to have stuff in the remote for threat to kind of continue trashing stuff. You've got your wireless net pavilion down already, so that's a good start.
Yeah, but you guys were setting up my defeat, huh? Practicing with the devil. I'm joking, but yeah. So I did get a pretty good opening with double gamble on turn 1, and turn 2 I did find a scrubber, so I went for the remote. Was this a good choice? It ended up being Sand into Virtual Tour that cost me all but 2 credits.
Why are you running that there? Like the problem that you're going to have with this is that with CTM, if that's I would assume if he's doubled it, it's going to be an MVT there, and that's just a hit that you have to take. But if that's a commercial bankers, or if that's a breaking news or whatever, he can tag you or start to get ahead in the money game, and you need to keep that pressure on here, which is kind of one of the things that people kind of overlook in the game with DLR Max, in my opinion, is they kind of sit there and they go, well, it's really easy game plan, actually. You just siphon them and then you eventually set up your board and go. But you have to do a really good job of controlling the board state at this point, because if they get out ahead of you and they get too much money, then eventually, like when you do go tag me, they're just going to trash everything. And it's not, as people who've played it have found out, is not that an easier deck to play. And I think that kind of doing that and trashing that is probably the right way to go in terms of controlling the board state. Because if he can get that Sansan rest and then score out an Astro, like he's got the rush game plan on, he can get a Beal and then when you are eventually going to go tag me, all he has to do is feed you a food, and then if he scores a breaking news, he can EOI it next turn. So I think trashing that and controlling his board and keeping him slow is probably the right call.
So I suppose the question for me here is, was this a misplay by Chris? So the reason I asked this is, obviously taxing Ben 10 credits is really good, really interesting play. But I question if keeping the Sansan is not better. So the reason I say this is, Ben basically has very limited access options in a DLR max deck. So if you ice, even if it's something with a very basic end the run like an Enigma or whatever, to Sansan, that causes the DLR max player a lot of problems. And a res Sansan has CTM both enables cool breaking news plays if you need them before the runner starts taking tags, but also just means that you can fast advance any agenda you draw, and that's huge really, and speeds you up quite a lot. So I do wonder if a valid strategy against this deck, and one that I've used when playing against DLR Max, is get a Sansan down, protect it, keep enough money to res it, and actually having it to protect against Siphons is a key play anyway, and then you can use that as your win con when you do get money back.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point. I think he played that as a reaction to me getting double gamble early on and wanted to swing the tempo to his favor, which is fair. But yeah, you are right. CTM decks only run 2 Sansans, so you really don't want them trash like that.
Yeah.
Alright, yeah, but in any case, yeah, that really set me back very far. And at this point, I think what a lot of people don't see is the interesting decision tree here. Do you clear the tag? You have 2 credits. You think he might have a
So
hard
I was
thing
just
to-
about to ask you the same question, but if he's going to trash it, and I'm guessing, but I don't know what Chris is thinking here, but I wouldn't trash the Wireless Net Pavilion here because you've just drawn one in hand. And that is why I'm assuming you didn't clear the tag, Ben, because it's probably a little bit of different game state if he is. Because trashing the Wireless Net is huge, right? Because the other stuff that kind of follows down from it, you can't really put anything else down while you're tagged because it kind of makes everything to trash 4 instead of 2.
Yep.
But having that one there, you're clearing a tag which will cost you 2 credits, whereas if he trashes it, it's costing him 4, and then you just install it for a click on the credit next turn because he knows you have it in hand.
Exactly. Yep. So
Yeah,
I was
agreed.
very happy with that. I mean, I was just more worried about, yeah, actually, yeah, I did feel like there was not much risk with leaving the extra tag there. Closed accounts doesn't mean much, and EOI isn't alive, so yeah, I think leaving the tag was reasonable.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think an interesting question to ask here is, you look at Chris's hand, he has a Jackson, a food, a pop-up, and he has a hard-hitting news. I think if I were him, I would have fired the HHN here. I mean, it's easy to say in retrospect, but would you?
So
It's difficult to say depending on how the game pans out, but one of the things that you do, and I want to talk about a bit later on, is the fact you don't install Joshua B and you don't get a heavy number of tags. I think the highest number you go to is you have 4 tags all game.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of quite key because that is one of the potential outs, and one of the things that we found in testing is a problem with the CTM matchup is that if you go to kind of 10, 11 tags with all the spamming stuff going out and things, then that is an additional problem. I think what he's thinking at this point is that he's just to put a toll booth down. He's like, well, if I can put something behind that and score it out. If he's playing hard-hitting news, he's got to pay, I think you were on 4 credits at that point, so he's got to pay 5 of his 7. So it is costing him quite a bit of money, and then you might siphon him, and then he's going to struggle to get back up into the match. That's the only reason I can think of why he's not done it.
So I think the other thing then is, you and Chris have played previous to this game, correct?
Yes, we have.
And in that game, you self took tags for trashes, siphons, etc., etc. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if you think about it from Chris's point of view, he is expecting you to go full on tag me, and I think he doesn't expect to need to hard-hitting news you at this point.
Fair enough.
So I think that is probably part of the assumption Chris has made from the earlier game as well.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's quite fair. The fact that we actually played in the previous game. So what happened after that was I clicked for credits, played short gamble, and my accounts were closed. Then I'm taking my turn now. Found the fall guy, which is pretty good. So now my assets are, or rather my resources are pretty much invulnerable. 8 credits to trash them is kind of out of Chris's range for now.
And you know that Chris doesn't play All-Seeing Eye, that's right.
Oh yes, that was actually a really huge factor. I knew that, yes.
Because I think if you knew he did or weren't aware either way, that would change your game plan quite a lot.
Yes, I would not have floated the tag in the first place, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's probably worth mentioning, right? Because otherwise it changes the whole equation.
Yeah, yep, thanks for bringing that up. So, Chris installs a naked remote here. The fact that it's not under the piece of ice basically telegraphs it's the one of the political assets. So running it next turn is quite a no-brainer. Then he ices out archives, which is interesting. I can see why though. Blocking the retrieval run is actually quite huge.
It also stops the Desperation Max play where you think that they're going to win next turn, and so you do something like mill 4 and run the bin and just hope that there's enough points in there for me to win.
Sure.
So it means you have to have the DDoS as well or something else. So it does stop the desperation plays.
That too, yep. So actually against DLR Max, you do want to ice up archives before R&D even. A lot of times Max will be too busy setting up their board state to bother with R&D. And here Chris installs another naked remote, again telegraphing a political asset that I will probably go for.
The other thing that you've done here, Ben, that's really interesting is that you've, despite being tag me, you've kind of put all your recon onto daily cast there, which is really strong, which negates any kind of closed accounts play. And like you said, it's going to be 8 for him to trash it. Well, in this case, you wouldn't pop the fall guy for it because you'd probably save that for Wild Stamp Pavilion. But the fact that he's going to spend 4 to trash that, which he's probably not going to do given the board state, which is really good and gives you continuing economy for the next few turns to afford to trash stuff.
Yeah, in my testing, I found that daily cast is a huge savior against decks with close accounts because it allows you to offshore money, and especially when the corp is not rich enough to trash all your assets. Sometimes I just take the tempo hit while playing the mill game just to install the daily cast so that I can get up to levy range faster or break through a resistor if need be. I find it really, really powerful.
Seems solid.
So, you notice my hand here, I'm trying to deduce my next turn. I have a rumor mill in hand. How much do you value rumor mill in this particular matchup?
So personally, I think it is a useful card because sometimes you need to get Jackson off the board and not have them shuffle in key cards or, general use. However, it's not as exciting as I thought it would be, but it is absolutely essential for decks that are playing currents which are very oppressive against Max, such as scarcity of resources, because you don't have a scoring plan for a large part of the game. So if someone plays a scarcity of resources first turn against DLR Max, if you're not playing currents and you don't see them early, you basically don't have a game because you can't afford to pay 2 extra for everything.
Yeah, half your deck's resources. You're quite sad. And when I saw you testing this deck, I saw the Hacktivist as well, which I was quite curious about. I was puzzled, like, why would you play that? But after a while, it made a lot of sense. Hacktivist is really good against CTM.
Yeah, it's generally really good against a lot of asset spam decks. I was testing one Hacktivist and one Rumor Mill, and it was kind of like, I'll test one of each or initially, and if one of them really kind of wows me, then I might change to 2 of. But actually having the versatility of, well, I'll just say one thing for the one I want was quite good. So yeah, it was quite strong.
Exactly, I found the exact same thing. Like, when you dig through your deck so quickly, you're fine with one of each.
Yeah.
Rumor Mill's also really good for the Caprice on the Glacier matchups as well, I find, especially if you're kind of trying to siphon there, that quite a lot of the time, if they do realise what's coming, they'll put Caprice on HQ, and obviously you're going to have difficulty accessing it with Eater, so you basically just have to kind of run and win the side game anytime you want to siphon, which is pretty crucial as well.
Yeah, a lot of Food Code and Polana decks are spending influence on other stuff, including Caprice and ditching Christian Grid. So Rumor Mill looks very good at the time Worlds was.
Yeah, I would say that is definitely a contributing factor, but I would also say, considering the world's meta and it just wasn't really a relevant point, I don't think, because none of the good or top decks were relying on things like Caprice, probably just because like Rumor
Yeah,
and because yellow was so good.
yep, that's true. So here I'm basically planning out my next turn, doing some hand management. I was actually planning out my next turn because I had enough cards to combo. So I had a DDoS in hand. I was looking to DDoS, Siphon, and click 3, swing over to R&D or archives so that I could install the DLR because all 3 centrals were iced up. So at this point I was just deciding what to ditch, and I was having quite a hard time. It was like, you want to keep Deja Vu, you want to keep Rumor Mill. Um, I'm not sure if I discarded the right card. Oh, and Retrieval Run, yeah. So those were the cards in my hand that were up for ditching. I'm not sure which one would have been the right choice. In the end, I decided to go with the Rumor Mill, keeping the Recursion in the form of Retrieval Run and Deja Vu.
I think that's pretty solid. I mean, you don't really care about Rumor Mill in this matchup a huge amount. It's in your bin, so until you levy, you've got access to it by using up a piece of recursion. So it seems crazy to use a piece of ditch a piece of recursion because you have less flexibility.
Yeah.
So I think Rumor Mill going is not really that bad.
Yeah, the other option would be to ditch the Siphon altogether and just go all in on the mill plan.
I mean, threatening to hit Siphon, even if you don't hit it, is usually really good. If he spends 4 credits on an Archangel, or 8 credits on a toll booth, or something like that to keep you out, I mean, that slows him down considerably.
Yep, I'm
So
waiting.
I think it's worth probably talking about Chris's hand at the moment. So Chris's hand is really interesting. So you can see in his hand he's got, say, a hard-hitting news, some economy, but from what I can tell, he's got another closed account, but he hasn't got any agendas.
No.
He hasn't drawn them.
So that's really interesting, right? So against a deck with such a great late game as DLR Max, you need to be scoring, right? Because if he doesn't do anything, you just build up your DLR board and kind of go, well, if you're not going to win, I'm just going to mill you out. And I will eventually get enough of my combo pieces regularly to do that. So...
And that's Chris's reaction to that, right? So he's put down a Jackson and he's now drawing like a madman for that reason, I'm assuming. So he's just played 2 short gambles, 2 hedge fund, and he's drawing, and he's discarding ice, and he's discarding hard-hitting news now because he's trying to fund those agendas.
Yeah, and in my mind I was like, I really, really shouldn't have dumped the Rumor Mill. This would be a very good time to shut off the Jackson, because I have no way to contest the Jackson. I mean, I could run the Jackson at this point, but I really wanted to get a DLR and the Siphon in, so that's what I went for. And yet, he shows the Resistor, so that basically locks him out and doesn't swing tempo away from him, which sucks.
So, you've got a Retrieval Run in hand.
Yep.
Okay, so I presume there's an Eater in the bin. I can't tell quite, but I guess
there is.
There is.
So, now I assume you were saving the Retrieval Run for the Fem. But so why in this instance didn't you DDoS, Retrieval Run for the Eater, then Siphon?
I think I was short on credits. I think I have exactly 2 credits left here. So, I could
have also
credit.
done it for the Fem as well and then put it on the inside ice, I guess. But
I could,
it's
yeah.
better play.
Yeah, credit, Retrieval Run, account Siphon. I was worried about the credit level basically because I still needed to pay to bypass.
Okay, so Chris is on 0 points. What is the rush? What would have hurt? So, would it really have hurt? I guess is my question. To take the build-up turn to enable that play, because landing that Siphon would have really helped your economy until it goes to council, but it would also have set him back, which is probably the more important thing in the DLR matchup. So.
Yeah.
I think in Ben's defense here, I'd kind of say, well, if I'm Chris, I mean, I've seen his hand and I'm pretty sure he's got a second closed accounts there. If I'm playing against closed accounts, as soon as he gets to 3 or 4, I'm using it because then he's in the room where he can click for a credit, short gamble, and then do that big turn that you're talking about, which is what he's going to be worried about. So kind of doing that and going now and getting the DLR installed kind of puts the continuous pressure on Chris.
Yeah, I'd say the counter argument there is that the closed accounts are great after a Siphon play. So they've taken all your money, they've got loads, they can use it to basically really threaten your board state, either by trashing cards or by setting up their own, by hard installing FEM or whatever it might be. But if you don't have, so that's actually kind of like a good use for closed accounts as well. So also he's played one of his 2 closed accounts.
Yes, you have to look at it from my point of view, and I don't think he has a second one in hand. So I think what you two brought up very good points. If I were to play again, I would have done it differently. As you said, holding back the big turn probably was in my best interest. I could have ran R&D, dropped the DLR, and clicked a couple of credits, so I could do it next turn. While still advancing my board state, which is installing the DLR. I think landing the successful Siphon would have set him back a lot further to justify it. And make it justifiable.
It also enables your future game plan. So once you've got Eater on the board, you do have the option then of using your recursion to Siphon lock him whilst DLRing.
Yep.
So, that's the only thing I would have probably looked at and thought that's what I want to try and set up. But, getting the DLR down and then making him respond to your board state, which is now I'm going to mill 4 every turn, is also, a very good strategy. I guess it doesn't put the lock on in the same way. So it doesn't say I'm going to reduce you to 0 credits and then keep DRing you. It's only kind of half the lock, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is. Like, the moment the Siphon fizzled on the resistor, I knew that I was not going to play account Siphon for the rest of the game. So I committed myself to, at this point I committed to keeping tags to a minimum and just playing the pure mill game.